good evening to everyone, wherever you are in the world. I feel that any endoscopist, when doing a diagnostic endoscopy, want to have a very clean mucosa. Hello, we are in 2020, we need it. And even any patient has the dignity to have a very good colonoscopy or upper endoscopy with very good and visible mucosa. My name is Cesare Hassan. This is an ESGE satellite webinar in close cooperation with Alfasigma, and we will talk about bubble. Claire, can you give me my first slide? And how to deal with bubble, because if you wash, you have more bubble. Do we have anti-foam agent? Are these agents effective? And are they effective only in the upper GI, or maybe in the small bowel, or also in the lower GI? Is Simethicone effective everywhere? How should we use per os through the scope? What channel? You know that a very respectable company, Olympus America, did a warning on the possibility that this non-soluble molecule can create some biofilm. We don't want cross-contamination throughout our scope. And least but not the last, if we accept the use of Simethicone as we should, how do we assess its efficacy, especially in colonoscopy? And we will present for the first time a bubble score, and we will assess through you the inter-observer agreement. So please stay with us until the end. In order to talk about all of this complex topic that has been fully addressed in our ESGE guidelines, I have an excellent panel, and we will put a lot of pressure on them. So the first speaker comes from Coimbra, where there is one of the most antique university that I had the privilege to visit together with Mario Diniz Ribeiro. And Mario presented me Miguel 5 or 6 years ago as a promise of Portuguese endoscopy. And now, Miguel, you are a promise of European endoscopy, maybe next year of all the world, and maybe one day of the moon or on the Mars. The second speaker is my lifetime friend, Robert Benamouzig. I live in Rome. Robert lives in Paris, and I must admit, Robert, that maybe Paris is more beautiful than Rome, but this is something that one webinar cannot address. So thanks both of us for joining. Thanks for both of us for taking the challenge of this somewhat hidden and underrated topic in GI endoscopy. It is anyway much important because Miguel and Robert, what is the need of advanced imaging, high definition, artificial intelligence if then I see only bubbles? So we need to have a clean mucosa. This is a top priority for our endoscopy community, and up to you how to address. So first Miguel, and then Robert, and then Miguel again. Thanks.
Okay, so thanks for all that are attending this webinar. So we would like to start with just a few questions, so just to know how people use or not Simethicone. So please prepare to respond. So during an upper endoscopy, do you usually use Simethicone? So you should choose between I do not use Simethicone on upper endoscopy, I use it as a pre-medication, I use during endoscopy using the instrument channel, I use it mixed with the water container, or I use it during an upper endoscopy mix on the water pump. So please make your choice. Give you some seconds on this. So we will start with 4 questions, and then we will go through the presentation just to be aware how people do it. So for upper endoscopy, so most people will not use it, more than 1/3. Some people are using as a pre-medication, some, and then if you use it during endoscopy by the instrument channel, the water container, or the water pump. So
Miguel, before you continue, do you feel that, I mean, are you somewhat disappointed that 1 every 2 doesn't use it? Does it indicate to you that maybe we don't have the right attitude for a high quality upper endoscopy? Just give your answer, and then I leave you back.
So my answer, I'm a big fan of Simethicone, and I hope to show that people that we have is not just a personal opinion, but also based on science. So hopefully by the end, I hope that we'll get better, not only on voting, but also on real life. So second question, still on upper endoscopy. So again, on upper endoscopy, so you can choose again that you say, I do not use it, but if you use it, how often do you think you use it? So in 1/4, more or less half of it, more than half, or in most every cases. So please vote again. So if you don't use it, those 40%, you can choose again the first option. But how often do you use it during an upper endoscopy, generally speaking? And so the answer, okay, so we keep the same 40% not using. So strikingly, only about 1 in every 4 we'll lose in most times.
I
So
feel it's very difficult for you, Miguel, today. Yeah, I feel you need to convince a lot of people to change their attitude.
Yeah, let's see if I can convince them by the end of this. Okay, so now moving a little bit to what Robert will talk about. So now in colonoscopy, so you'll have the same question. So you will not use it. You can use it as a pre-medication along with the bowel prep, or if you use it through the scope by the instrument channel, the water container, or the water pump. So please vote again now for lower GI for colonoscopy.
Miguel, I will never tell you that I used to the water pump. You could blame me for creating biofilm with strange microorganism in my colonoscopy.
Okay. Yeah, that will be more in the end of the talk, but okay. You are not the only one, Cesare. So let's see the results. Okay, again, almost half of people don't use Simethicone. 1 in every 5 you will use it along with the bowel prep. And then again, the instrument channel mostly, but some people using the water container or the water pump. And then I will go to the final starting question. So again, if you use it during colonoscopy, let me see if I can change the slide. So someone. By the way,
Miguel, let me say that for me it's the same 40%. Those 40% that use in upper also use in lower. And now, so there are some people who believe, some people who do not believe.
So we have to increase the believers. So again, if you do not use it, you can vote it. But then, how often do you use the Simethicone on colonoscopy now?
This is unfair, Miguel, because maybe you don't have bubble all the time. How often when you have bubble you use?
Yeah, that will be a good question to the end. So we can say in Italy, in Portugal.
Unless you use for bowel prep, as you know we do in Italy.
Okay, so again, around 40% will not use it. A few people will use it in less than half of cases, although in colonoscopy, we now see 1 in every 3 using most of the times. Okay, so
Miguel, stop 1 second, because I forget to tell people that there is a Q&A function. I'm very interested in those who do not use Simethicone. Can you tell us why don't you use it? Maybe for the warning, biolimpus, blah, blah, blah. So we can discuss later with Miguel. Please, Miguel, continue.
And then, Cesare, you can pose the question. So what Cesare was saying is that this is the picture that most of the times we get, or at least sometimes. So this is the stomach, and this is what we want. So this is the same patient, the same stomach, without Simethicone and after Simethicone. And as Cesare said, it only makes sense to be a good endoscopist, use a good scope, use artificial intelligence, whatever you want, if you have this kind of stomach, because with this, it doesn't matter what, you will not see anything. So I will just show a video. So what can happen in most of times. So this is the esophagus, probably not so many times with so many bubbles, but between bubbles and saliva, you will see some debris. So it's running slowly. So this is mostly because of the internet connection.
Miguel, while the video is showing, if I don't wash the mucosa and I give a report with this mucosa, is this malpractice? Is an endoscopy somewhat in our duty to clean all of this?
Yeah, of course. You cannot say anything with the stomach or esophagus or duodenum like this. So we still don't have a bowel classification like we have, for instance, the Boston classification. But then if you use it, for instance, if you use it, I think it's just a problem with the web speed. Okay, but then after using Simethicone through the water channel, in this case, you will see this lesion on the stomach that was impossible to see with all those bubbles. And then I will show you again in the esophagus after cleaning. Now you can see the mucosa, and now you can say that you don't see anything relevant in the esophagus.
Miguel, I feel this is outstanding. I guess that most of us, and I include myself in first, may have missed lesions like this because we don't think about cleaning the mucosa as we should.
And so with this, we removed this lesion by ESG, and it was a 20 millimeters lesion with high-grade dysplasia. So that's why we sometimes, after 1 or 2 years after doing an upper endoscopy, we will find a gastric cancer, and then we get strange why it happened. That's because it happens. So moving to the next slide. So these are all 3 cases. Sorry, I will go a little bit before. So these are all 3 cases. It's difficult because of the delay, sorry. So these are all 3 early gastric cancers. Probably you would say that the middle picture, everybody would see it. On the left, you will have some doubts. Are only those erosions? Is there an ulcer? Is there only debris? In fact, it was an intermucosal cancer. And probably the lesion on the right, you might miss it if you don't use anything there, because it really is, you don't see it because of the bubbles. So this is a video from Professor Raf Bishops from Belgium. And what he's going to show is that even if you know that there's a lesion there, I think it was this case, so Professor Bishop was going to do a therapeutic procedure, you need to clear everything, again, with Simethicone, otherwise it will be impossible to detect and delineate that lesion. Even if you know that he's there, you already saw it in a previous endoscopy, and you want to do your best therapeutic procedure, you need to know where it starts, where it ends. So you need a very clear view, even just for therapeutics.
I feel that, Miguel, these are great demonstration because most of the lesions in the upper GI are flat and advanced, while in the colon we have big polyp that we cannot meet. So I guess that these images and video you show give us the feeling that we need to clean the mucosa. I feel very great demonstration.
Okay, so beyond the videos, we need science. So, and with science, we start with the quality improvement that we are starting on ESGE. And in 2016, when we launched the key performance measures for upper GI, you will see that on the pre-procedure, we only talked about fasting. So this domain was only about fasting, no pre-medication, and we only talked about hours for liquids and hours for solids. This is 2016, but we know from Japanese patient literature that for long they use several medications in every endoscopy, not just for therapeutics, and combining water with pronase or acetylcysteine, so we don't have pronase on Europe, sodium bicarbonate or Simethicone, and a mixture of all of these for several years. But we were lacking data on 2016. So the next year in our department, we did this study, a randomized control trial. So we had this classification because, as I said, we don't have any classification for upper GI and for bubbles. So the esophagus, stomach, and duodenum, what would be excellent? What would be adequate? So with water or Simethicone, you might move from this to this one. And what would be inadequate that you will not be able to see clearly, even although you try to wash it, whatever. So we randomized 300 patients just to drink water 15 to 30 minutes before, having Simethicone or having Simethicone plus acetylcysteine. And our results showed that the excellent in the esophagus, excellent in the stomach, and excellent in the duodenum, only with water. These were our results, especially very bad in the stomach. But if you move to Simethicone or acetylcysteine, you can move from 70 to like 90%. The same in the duodenum, and in the stomach you move from around 40 to 75%, and this was statistically significant. So acetylcysteine didn't get any much better than Simethicone, but Simethicone made a huge difference from nothing. And then next year we had the first meta-analysis. So these were already 7 trials by then, all favoring Simethicone, not just on the score of visibility, but also on finding more lesions. So this is the endpoint that we want, not just visibility, but also lesions. And then after this meta-analysis in 2018, several other studies focusing on how adequate or excellent were the visibility, or in this case, they use the scores visibility, which is the lower, it's better. So we move to better if you have Simethicone or Simethicone with a mucolytic. And then looking for endpoints, and probably these are the 2 most relevant studies, especially the first one, you see a very large number of patients. So the endpoint was early cancer. And if you move from water to pronase, Simethicone, or both, you'll see more lesions, not many, but if you move from 1.3 to 1.6, it's relevant. It's like more 15% of lesions. And just looking for dysplasia, you can move from 1.6 to 8.7. So Simethicone gives a better view, but also will allow you to see more things, which is what we want to. And so since the publication of the ESGE guideline, we have this one from the British Society of Gastroenterology and the Association of Upper Gastrointestinal Surgeons of Great Britain and Ireland, saying that for adequate mucosal visualization, you need to achieve a combination of air insufflation, aspiration, and the use of a mucosal cleaning techniques. Afterward, this guideline from Asia, this consensus for upper endoscopy, saying that you should use mucolytic and or any defoaming agent to improve your visual clarity in upper endoscopy and for improved endoscopic image. And finally, this position statement from the Gastroenterological Society of Australia, saying that the continued use of Simethicone is considerably reasonable as it improves mucosal inspection during gastroscopy and colonoscopy and likely facilitates adenoma detection in colonoscopy. And this is my slides for upper endoscopy. Then just a few slides on small bowel. Again, for small.
Wait, yeah? Wait, Miguel, yeah? I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Something that I didn't think in the past. Okay. So when I do a colonoscopy, yeah, I always put the level of cleansing with the Boston scale, okay? 3, 3, yeah. 3, 2, 2, 2, 1, 1, 1. But actually, I don't remember one upper GI report where I read the level of visibility of the mucosa. Now you show your randomized trial, and actually you had an objective way to assess the level of cleansing, inadequate, adequate, etc., etc. So, do you personally use something to objectivize the level of cleansing in the upper GI or not? And is it something widespread in Portugal, or what's your feeling?
Okay, so my feeling on this, in upper GI, usually we don't have problems with food, otherwise we just remove the scope because of the risk of aspiration, but we have a lot of debris, saliva, and bubbles. That's a real problem. And you have to remove them. Otherwise, you cannot say that it's normal. To do that, you will need to use Simethicone, and I hope to have passed that idea by the end of this lecture, as a pre-medication or during endoscopy. But usually bubbles are possible to remove. So it's very easy by the end of the report to say that you didn't see anything because you removed the bubbles. But usually you will have to remove it. If you don't use any pre-medication, you will need to use Simethicone during an upper endoscopy to be aware that it's normal.
Miguel, wait, yeah, because you are too smart for us.
Sorry.
In your report, do you assess the level of visibility of the mucosa or no, because you are so good that you don't need it?
No. First of all, most of my upper endoscopies, I will do it using Simethicone as a pre-medication. So it's good already. If not, I will using during the endoscopy by the channel of the scope. Okay? And always say that visibility, it's okay. So there's no scale validated by now. But if I am not able to see it, I need to say it. So it's the way around. So I usually get a perfect inspection because of the Simethicone, so I don't need to say it. Otherwise, if I have too much bubbles that are impossible to remove, I need to say it, that people have to repeat.
Okay, so Miguel, you show your randomized trial, okay?
Yeah.
You were quite humble because it was your trial. But the result is shocking because you said, look, Cesare, if you don't use Simethicone, you have only 40% good visibility in the stomach. That is probably the most important, at least in Italy. Then when I use Simethicone, I go from 40% to over 70%. That is a twofold increase. Okay,
yes,
but
it is.
Miguel, you know that a trial is a trial. These are ideal population. You exclude the blah 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 blah. So, is it your feeling that that Simethicone make such a big impact on upper GI endoscopy? To tell the truth, Miguel,
Yeah.
do you really feel that those who don't use Simethicone like me in upper GI endoscopy are really, really stupid?
Not stupid. They are just.
Don't worry, don't get offended.
No, I would say that you are outdated and you need to be updated. Just
Yeah,
that.
I'm over 50. You are young. Look at you.
Yeah, so now we have scientific proof that Simethicone is relevant. That's the right answer. So we are always on time to get better.
Okay? You convinced me, Miguel. You convinced me. I feel that I will change from tomorrow. I will have a debriefing with my team. I feel your evidence. Okay, Miguel, let me say to the audience why I forced you to present this slide, and I want to thank my best friend, Professor S.p.A, to give this opportunity. Because in small bowel capsule endoscopy, Miguel, you don't have the opportunity to clean. So it's not like upper endoscopy, you just put some Simethicone, you do your procedure. So in a small bowel, it's extremely important that everything is clean when the capsule. So please go on, Miguel.
Okay, so probably the best is to show these two videos. So I have to thank Professor S.p.A, and you can see clearly the difference on the left without using Simethicone and on the right with using Simethicone. So, and as Cesare said, during a small bowel enteroscopy or a capsule, especially on capsule, you cannot do anything. If you see the bubbles, they are there. You cannot go there and aspirate or put Simethicone. So it's done, and you will lose this exam because it's impossible to say anything on the left. So again, on scientific evidence. So we have already a systematic review and a meta-analysis. I say that the names are wrong on the publication. So this is in favor of Simethicone, not other way around. So in terms of visibility, it's better to use versus not using. And if you have just fasting as a preparation, Simethicone will make a huge difference. If you use a PEG, Simethicone is not so relevant, although this study showed that probably it will be better, again, because of the bubbles, not because of the preparation. And interestingly, this is a more recent study from 2018, and you will see, so grade 0 or grade N is better with no bubbles or few bubbles on the proximal and on the distal segment. So you can move from 16 to 80% of better visibility. But when they asked for other departments on the Netherlands, so they asked in 16 departments how many of them were using any anti-defoaming, only 3 in 16, so just 1 in every 5 was using Simethicone as a standard preparation for capsule endoscopy. Although the technical review from the European Society is already stressing for a long time, and also on this in 2018, that you should use anti-foaming agents before a capsule ingestion. And this will end my presentation. I will move it to Robert. Robert, I don't know if Cesare want to pose some question by now.
No, you wait, Miguel, because there are a lot of questions for you, because the audience is outstanding today, because I was sure that mucosal visibility is an interesting topic. So what kind of pharmaceutical formula of Simethicone do you use as a pre-medication in upper endoscopy? Short answer, Miguel.
Short answer, in upper endoscopy, 1 glass of water, 100 milliliters, with 100 milligrams of Simethicone as a liquid. So
what the concentration, Miguel? What the concentration?
Well, it depends on the concentration that you have. So, but you should see the count. So it goes to 100 milligrams of Simethicone.
Miguel, can we consider Simethicone in upper GI bleeding?
Bleeding? Yeah. Why not? Why not? Bubbles always interfere with you, not just blood.
I mean, I have a very basic question for you. Why don't you have why don't you create a new score for assessing the good quality of upper endoscopy?
Yeah,
as,
so I need
as the Boston score in colon. This is a good question. You can leave this for your president.
Yeah. So I think we need some kind of scale as we use on the lower GI. Yeah.
Miguel, if you need to do with propofol, does it change your approach?
Yeah. So I was waiting for that question. So with propofol, I have a problem with anesthesia, not with myself or the patient with anesthesia, because we give that glass of water, so 100 milliliters of water, 15 to 30 minutes before an upper endoscopy, if the patient is not under sedation. With sedation, anesthesiologists don't want us to give any water, whatever, in the last 2 hours. That's why in those cases, I have Simethicone to use during the endoscopy by the scope. So I always use Simethicone as a pre-medication without sedation. With sedation, I have it by my side in the room to use it through the scope.
Okay, we need to find an agreement with anesthesiology, but it's not easy. Okay, thanks, Miguel. Yeah. Please continue to answer to all the questions with the Q&A. Robert, great pleasure for me to introduce you in colonoscopy.
Yeah, colonoscopy is the next step. So we will try to discuss also this problem of bubbles, but not only the bubbles, the quality of the prep, in fact, because it's the same issue. And we want to show you something again. The first one is that when you have this obscuration by bubbles in the colon, it's exactly the same problem as discussed in the stomach. We can miss some lesions and it's not okay. So what we can do and what we are doing now, we can do washing, suctioning, and if needed, adding Simethicone to the bowel prep, including in the prep before the colonoscopy or during the examination. For the improvement in bubble obscuration, we have some studies. And for example, this data that show clearly that the mucosa is obscure in around 40 to 50% of the cases with some bubbles. And when we move to the some real obscuration, it's around 12%. And if we add Simethicone in the prep, we have almost no of this important obscuration by bubbles, and mainly no bubbles, in fact, at all. So for these reasons, it can be a real input and a real some good news to have some prep with Simethicone in. There is also another point, is that when you don't have this bubble, you don't need to clean the colon again, you don't need to have this suction, and so you can have some less water shooting, and it was proven in this study. And what is really interesting is that when you ask the endoscopist by the end of the day, what is his reaction, if he's with some fatigue or not, we see that there is an improvement not only in water shooting cones or in the quality of the prep, but also in the quality of life for the endoscopist. So something very interesting. We have not only this data. We just know we have a good set of observation, and all the data show that we have more bubble without Simethicone, less bubble with Simethicone. Whatever the design or the number or the origin of these studies. So it's something very strong and convincing from these 4 randomized clinical trials on around 500 patients. We have also, when we go to some other data, with different numbers, we have a meta-analysis on this time 8 randomized control studies, and we show exactly the same, less bubbles and not only less bubble in this case, but also an higher quality of the prep as a whole. So it's not only the story of the bubble, it's the story of the quality of the preparation, and you know very well that this is a main point for us. So when we move to the 2-liter Bowel prep, it is not the case for all the study. We have less trial, only 5, but again, there is the same results. When we try to separate the split regimen from the other one, we can see that it's something that is less important for the split, maybe because since we have a higher level of preparation, it's not so easy to show the real impact. However, you see that the square is on the line, so it's not significant, but it is something that can be a little improvement. So when the European Society for Gastroenterological Endoscopy makes the last recommendation, for the first time they suggest that adding oral Simethicone to bowel preparation is a good thing to do. And it was, according to the results, evaluated as a weak recommendation with moderate quality evidence, because there is not thousands of patients, but it is new. It is the beginning of something. There is also some data from Australia. We speak about the Bowel paper. And again, in this position paper, independent from the European point of view, they discuss the input of Simethicone, and they report something new that we will discuss after that, because it's the question of the needed level of disinfection, if there is any point according to the fact that maybe there is some biofilm with Simethicone. We will see that with Miguel just now. So there is also some interesting data in models. And for example, in this in vitro data shows that Simethicone prevents the formation of bubbles. And this is true with the dosage as low as 20 milligrams per 100 milliliters. So maybe a few Simethicone is sufficient to get the effect. It was what we get when you use the prep with the Simethicone, but it is also something that you can do when you use it directly as an add-on during the colonoscopy. This is very important. However, at this time, but it is mainly because there is some power in the detection issue there. Just now, we don't have data that show that this improvement in the quality of the prep can be transferred in the sensitivity to detect lesion, and mainly important lesion. So to go to see the wider pictures, we are now very fond of the adequate preparation, because we know that it is needed to improve the detection of adenomas, and furthermore to avoid any post-colonoscopy colorectal cancer, which are the real problem now, because we know that this level of post-colonoscopy colorectal cancer is around 6% at 3 years and mostly 9% at 5 years. So how to improve that, how to lower these figures. And of course, there is the bubble issue, but also the prep as a whole issue with Simethicone, of course. And the main point in the last European guidelines was about the split regimen. And just now, we recommend that split dosing is absolutely needed for any elective colonoscopy performed. And this is a strong recommendation with high quality of evidence. And this came from this time high number of randomized controlled trials with split versus no split, and all kind of bowel preparation. And when we see the whole literature, we move from some 63% of adequate bowel preparation with a no split to more than 85% with a split preparation. So it's very important. It's not something. So when we say that after the split, we have to discuss what is the best product, what is the more potent one, what is the less what is the less side effect present, and is there some use in restriction, and also for the patient, what is something easy to take and to accept. It's always a big problem for the colon prep for the patient. And we can see again what was about this point in the updated European recommendation. And in fact, there is, when you go to the text, it's not very interesting because they recommend height or low volume, so one of the other one, and as well as PEG or non-PEG. So for the choice, every choice is possible. And the only point is in patient at risk for any hydroelectrolyte disturbances, then the choice should be individualized. But what is the reality? Well, I don't know what I have to do with that. So maybe we need to go in more detail. And because even it is a strong recommendation, in my opinion, something very vague and meaning more. So what is more? More is that we have some strong data that shows that high volume PEG is non-inferior to 2 liter PEG. And we have also, and it is important, one meta-analysis that shows that the 4 liter split regimen is better than the 2 liter split regimen or non-PEG regimen. And this is very important to be considered when we move to the choice. However, there is a lot of other criteria when we have to choose the best prep for the patient. When we go to the low volume PEG, there is some adjuvant. In fact, there is ascorbat, Simethicone and citrate, or even for the last one, only 1 liter, not 2 liter ascorbat. But we have not all the data, no comparison with the 4 liter just now. And we can also add some Visacodil. Visacodil, something that is not very used, but can be in some part of the world used. It's non-inferior to 4 liter PEG or 2 liter PEG plus ascorbat. For ascorbat, it's non-inferior to 4 liter PEG or non-PEG regimens. And 2 liter citrate simethicone are also non-inferior to 4 liter PEG or 2 liter PEG. So again, there is no strong differences. So any of these preparations are okay for the patient to be considered. When we move to non-PEG, it's magnesium citrate plus picosulfate or trisulfate. And again, there is something that shows that 4 liter PEG is superior than magnesium citrate plus picosulfate, but the other study showed non-inferiority to 4 liter or 2 liter PEG plus ascorbat. So when we have that, it's not easy. So maybe safety can help us. And for 4 liter, the main point is with congestive heart failure. And it is exactly the same for all the PEG prep, in fact. But for the ascorbat, we have some more problem with renal insufficiency, phenylketonuria, or glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency. For the citrate simethicone, we have also the problem of renal insufficiency. And at this time, we are not the same range of post-marketing data that for 4 liter PEG or 2 liter PEG plus ascorbat. For the 1 liter PEG ascorbat, it's very limited post-marketing data, and we have the same set of problems. So again, there is some problems that maybe more with ascorbat, but this is not something very differential from one to the other. So, however, there is some point with the non-PEG, because with non-PEG, including magnesium citrate or trisulfate, there is some electrolyte problem with hypermagnesemia, hyponatremia, sometimes mucosal injury in the esophagus of the stomach. So that can help us to discuss the best prep. We have also some point with sodium phosphate, and just now we have some strong recommendation for oral sodium phosphate from the European Society, is to recommend against the routine use of this prep. For tolerability, we can use the 4 liter as a reference, and then we see that all the low volume ones are superior to the 4 liter PEG.
Robert, we have a problem with your audio. In meanwhile, I can present this because I did it with Cristiano, and this was the use of a low volume prep with the Simethicone in it against what here in Italy is the gold standard 4 liter PEG, and you may see that when using split, both of them were very good. What is interesting that in one there is the Simethicone. Next slide, Claire, can you move the slide? And this is the side effect, but as Robert said, that is not different. Also, because in a trial, in a small trial, it's very difficult to show a difference in side effect. Please, Robert, go over.
Thank you so much for the help, Cesare. But of course, you know very well this data because it's from your group. And then according to the safety of this prep, we have some strong data that show that there is some, first of all, there is not so much of this point, and then that it's similar between the 2 liter Simethicone than the 4 liter PEG as a whole, with less headache. That is sometimes observed after a colon prep, according to the change, I think, in the osmolarity. So we have, sorry, because I don't. Okay, when you move this to the willingness to repeat the thing, and also to the ease to take the prep, we see that there is a real advantage to use low volume prep, in this case the 2 liter PEG and Simethicone, than the 4 liter. And when you try to see the same thing between the 2 liters PEG prep available, you see that the figure is exactly the same, with mainly no differences that show clearly that these 2 liter prep are better tolerated than the 4 liter. It's not new, and there is no difference between the 2 main ones. So I finish. So first, to synthesize the talk, first, bubbles are important for the quality of the prep. It is not only the point of Simethicone, but also the point of the volume and the profile of the drug. So maybe you have to consider this new possibility for your patients. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Robert. Very master presentation. Miguel, can you come back? So let me summarize, because I am the moderator. So I guess that there is no doubt. All of us agree that if the mucosa is not visible, the risk of post-endoscopy cancer is unsatisfactorily high, okay? And I must admit that, Miguel, you convinced me a lot. For upper GI, Robert, you confirm what it is for lower GI. So I would also tend to conclude, my dear friends, that Simethicone works, because Simethicone works in the upper GI from 40 to 80. It works in the small bowel it also works in the large bowel, and it may also increase the detection. So the feeling is that this molecule works, but there are questions here, my friends, that ask you about something that is the elephant in the room. I tried twice to tell you, but you didn't respond. So there is a warning from Olympus America that Simethicone, when included in the biopsy channel or in the water channel, may create biofilm. But we are physicians. We always need to weigh the good with the bad. I will never find a compromise between my endoscope, and my patient. So where to put the bar? Miguel first, Robert, and then as moderator, I will close.
Okay. As you said, Cesare, patients first, okay? And the endoscope afterwards. So, and as Robert said, there is no scientific proof that if you have a biofilm, it will make harm. So it's a concern, but it's not a scientifically proven point of view. And as you said, bubbles are relevant for the patients, and you might miss things because if you are just concerned with your scope. And regarding the channel, we have a slide just by the end.
Robert.
In fact, we check our endoscope on a regular basis. We do a lot of this biological and bacteriological and so on. It's very expensive. In general, you have only a few bacteria or nothing. And so you have the security, by the way. And even if there is some biofilm that is not proven as a true problem, even with that, we have the security. So you can, it's exactly as in a car. You can drive safe because you have some security. You don't have to stop if you want to travel. And in my opinion, it's exactly the same point. We have to travel. To travel is to have a good endoscopy with a good result for the patients. The best one. So there is this point for the colon. Of course, we have the problem of the prep. It's important, but we have to do it. So we have to take care of it. We have to be aware of it. We have to check our results. But if the endoscopy is clean during this this check, expensive one, it's okay for me.
Okay, so since I'm Italian, I try to be a bit balanced. My suggestion is, of course, as Miguel and Robert, to use it. The other suggestion is use it when necessary, and possibly if use through the scope at the possible lowest doses that are the ones that are indicated by Miguel. It's about 0.02% of Simethicone, or you can give it per os, and the concentration are immediately extremely low. But now the most fascinating part of the presentation, what's new, what we'll do all together as a community. There is still a lot of audience. I thank all of you for staying with us so much every Wednesday. So Miguel, do it together.
Okay, so then we try to make a scale just for the bubbles. And this is a study that we have just submitted for publication. So in Europe, for several people from several countries. And so what we did was there was several classifications from those randomized trials that Robert just talked about, and we tried to merge all those classifications and to create just one, the easiest possible. So we call it the CBUS, from colonic endoscopic bubble scale. A 0 would be something with no or a minimal amount of bubbles, with less than 5% of the surface, and so it will not you will not need to do anything because you have a good mucosal visibility. A CBUS 1 with some moderate amount of bubbles, covering from 5 to 50% of the surface. It will affect the visibility, so you will have to do something and take some time for removal of these bubbles. And this, what we would call the CBUS 2, with a severe amount of bubbles, more than 50% of the surface, obscuring the visibility and requiring some time or much time to remove. So what we did, so we took 45 pictures and we asked 2 questions per picture. So first of all, you have the picture, and you would say what was the amount of bubbles that you think of, And then we also asked what would be your clinical attitude if you have a colon like this. So we had in a phase 1 4 expert colonoscopists, and you will see the intra and the inter-observer reliability was quite high, from substantial to almost perfect. It's very rare, even in the endoscopy field, to have such huge numbers for any classification. Not even the Boston classification has a so huge number. And then on a phase 2, we had 19 observers, 6 experts, and 13 trainees. And you see all the results tend the same, almost perfect for the inter-observer, and again, almost perfect for the inter-observer. So it seems to be a very easy classification to use. And so it seems to be quite nice to use along with the Boston, because you know that on the Boston classification, you don't classify the bubbles. Then regarding the clinic attitude, so for a CBUS 0, most people will not do anything. For a CBUS 2, most people will need to wash, and most of people will use Simethicone to remove all these bubbles. And the problem is it's in the middle, as always, because most people will try to clean with something, with or without Simethicone. But most people with this picture will try to do something to see better, and that it's the relevant thing, because it's not so rare to have this picture. So the slide that we were talking about, Cesare, so it's true that Simethicone can contribute to the formation of biofilms. So the most important thing is no proven this will get some kind of infection. As Robert said, if you do a check on your scopes, usually it's negative, but you should never use it by the auxiliary water channel. So if you use it during an endoscopy, not as a pre-medication, but during the endoscopy, so use the biopsy channel at the low concentration, not with your water pump, and use, so then you just need to do the normal processing, because don't forget that auxiliary water channel is not reprocessed, and this is the reason why you should not use Simethicone on this. So just to stress what Cesare just told. So I don't know if you have any question. Then we would have a test for the audience, so for people to try to classify the pictures.
Miguel, go to
yeah,
the test.
Okay. So just for people to play a little bit around before we end. And Claire, I will give you the command. So this is a picture, and we would like you all to vote. So would you classify this picture as a CBUS 0 with no or minimal bubbles, with a moderate amount of bubbles, or with a severe amount of bubbles? And I will stress that the classification is also on the bottom, so you can keep see the classification to prove. So I think you can open the poll, Claire. Okay, should be coming. So please vote, and you have the classification on the bottom. So we can try to play a little bit. So we will have 6 pictures to classify. So let's see what people would vote on this.
Miguel, if there is a flat polyp behind the bubbles, I would miss it.
Yeah. Okay, these pictures don't have bubbles. Okay, so most people will grade 1. So please, Claire, move to the other one. The same picture. What would you do if you find something like this in the column? Nothing? Would you use water, or would you use water with Simethicone through the biopsy channel? So please vote again. So I didn't see the numbers. Okay, so Cesare, most of people agree with you and me and Robert. So you need to do something, otherwise beyond those bubbles you will see might skip something relevant.
I feel that if you have Simethicone, you wash with Simethicone. I feel that all of us agree on this. If you don't have Simethicone, you can do washing, and people are right, but you need to do dynamic washing, because if you just wash, you have more and more bubbles. So you need to wash and see, and then dynamically you need to move and wash and see. So it's not so easy to do the wash and see with bubbles. So if you have Simethicone, it's much easier. If not, you need to be quite expert to do a dynamic washing of the Bowel bubbles. Okay, go to the next.
So Claire, you can go to the next one. So again, you'll have the classification on the bottom. So Claire, I think you can open the poll. You can see the picture, and you have the classification on the bottom. So it should be easy to place your vote there.
Okay, Miguel, who voted 0 will be interviewed live because we want to know why they voted 0.
Let's see. Sometimes, okay, okay, perfect. Yeah, we also agree. So Claire, again, the same, move to the other one. So now the question again, this should be more easier, this one. So again, you can open the poll, Claire. So nothing, wash with water or wash with Simethicone.
Miguel, while people respond, I have a question for Robert.
Yeah.
Just assume that you are unable to remove all of these bubbles, okay? You are just unable because maybe you don't have a Simethicone. What do? Do you recall the patient to do a colonoscopy in 1 year as it was an inadequate bowel cleansing, or anyway there are only bubbles, so maybe we don't need to repeat colonoscopy?
In this case, exactly with all these bubbles, first, I will try to clean the best I can. So, sometimes, according to the different prep we discuss, we add bubble to the bubbles because it's exactly as in the washing machine. When you go to something cleaner, you have something with more bubble. But if you fail, and it is this still the same figure, it's very exceptional, in fact. It's the same figure. I will recall for some examination, maybe not in 1 year, maybe that according to the case, of course, in the 6 months or something like that.
Yeah, so I agree. So we need to repeat when bubble prevent the visualization of the proximal colon, because in the proximal colon we have a flat lesion. So if there are bubble, we cannot see. It's like the esophagus by Raf, or the stomach by Miguel, or the small bowel by Cristiano. So if there are bubble in the proximal colon, we miss. So we need to repeat the examination. This is at the end the efficiency of Simethicone. Okay, maybe we can contribute potentially to biofilm together with a lot of other stuff. Okay, but if we don't clean the bubble, we need to repeat colonoscopy. So I fully agree with Robert. Go on, Miguel.
Okay, so Claire, can you move to the other one? So we have 6 pictures, should be quite fast just for people to try to play a little bit. So Claire, I think you can move it. Otherwise, okay. So again, you can open the poll. So again, another picture with some bubbles. So what would you classify? 0, 1, or 2? You have the classification on the bottom. So it should only take a few seconds.
In the meanwhile, Miguel, there was again, okay.
Yeah, and you
there
can
again
put the second one just with the question on the clinical attitude, Claire, please. And during the poll, I think you can ask something, Cesare.
Yeah, so there is again, Miguel, one question. Should we use to the biopsy channel, to the water jet channel, and blah, blah, blah? So I feel that there is no evidence that one channel is more dangerous than the other. My point remains the same. Use Simethicone only when needed. In that case, the benefit risk are favorable. So choose whatever channel you like, but it must be necessary. Or if not, give it Peros. That maybe is a solution. Do you agree?
Yeah. So Claire, I think you can move to the picture number 4, and then I will, and then you can open the poll again. So I think this is one. So responding to your question, Cesare, that's why I always prefer to use Simethicone as a pre-medication for upper or lower GI.
Most of the people.
As most as you use it as a pre-medication, the use during the endoscopy will be much lower.
Anyway, your score, Miguel, works very well. Actually, I was not expecting such a good success, but I must admit that you did a very good job. I feel that all of us, all the audience together, congratulate with you, Miguel, because your score is extremely solid, extremely robust. We agreed on virtually all the voting. This is something that, at least in research, could be used. It is 8 o'clock, and we should close. There's no need to answer to this question, my friend. But I have some question for you, Robert. What to do in a patient with severe heart failure? What bowel prep would you recommend?
In fact, it's very difficult because, as you've seen, it's always a warning for these patients. I'm very conservative and I prefer to use a classical PEG without any adjunct. But according to the age, in general, the patients that are very aged, they are very tired. Some issue according to the volume. So I will try to check the cleanness, and after 3 liters of PEG, if it's okay, I stop. If needed, I move to the 4 liter classical one. So I'm much more, even if it is something that we have to take into account, to the classical old-fashioned prep in this patient, mainly because I'm used to do it. Maybe because young people do it differently. I don't know, but I'm still with the old prep for this patient. Just a question for Miguel, because we play. Because when we speak about bubbles, just now we speak about the point to have the good prep. But tomorrow morning, we will use the artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
And just know it's not always the case that the system can differentiate some bubbles from the small polyps. So maybe it's also something to be considered, at least in the intermediate period, that time, when we don't have the best artificial intelligence that can separate some bubbles from some polyps. But to have a good prep is good for the patient, it's good for the detection, but maybe also can be something when this system will be widely available to be considered as also a plus for the patient.
Yeah, and artificial intelligence to really work in the future, more or less distant or proximal future, we don't know, the pictures or the videos will have to be perfect. And to be perfect, it's about preparation and also bubbles. With bubbles, artificial intelligence will never work, no matter how much it costs or how good it is.
And Cesare, what is your opinion?
I mean, I fully agree. So we don't need bubble. But Miguel and Robert, there is one good point by Pedro that the visibility at the end is a question of time. I mean, in the upper endoscopy, you can clean everything, but it takes much more time. So Miguel and Roberto, how much not to give a Simethicone S.p.A medication result in a prolonged exploration time or examination time?
Yeah, so I would say from my personal experience, because you don't see that on trials, that if you do not use it as a pre-medication, you will lose some minutes, I would say at least 2 or 3 in an upper GI, and probably even more in a colonoscopy if you find the colonoscopy full of bubbles that sometimes you see. And even if you consider that in colonoscopy time might not be so relevant, if you imagine an upper GI without sedation and you lose some of your minutes to do cleaning and removing of bubbles, tolerance becomes quite the issue for the patient. So you need every second to see the best as you can. So it's really relevant to use it, and especially as a pre-medication.
Okay, so I want to thank again our audience, because they are so numerous and they have been with us until the end. But I feel this is because the topic was important. Simethicone was always around us, but we never thought. We used, but we never thought about it. So we need to thank so much both Miguel and Roberto for providing a systematic approach to Simethicone, and I guess that the take-home message is very, very important, and most of us will change our approach. But of course, the summer with the ESGE does not end here. We have a virtual summer, so I invite all of you to our institutional webinar on July the 15th, always at the same time, and the topic is the impact on COVID-19, and this is together with the I group, this of the young endoscopy. So don't miss it. and see you back in 1 week. Thank Roberto, thank Miguel, and thank all of you for staying with us until now.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.